Have you ever been in a store or on the internet and you see something and you think to yourself, I want that? Or perhaps more accurately, I need it. You might even say it out loud only to quickly be reminded by your spouse or significant other that you don't really need it, you just want it, right? Well, this happened to me recently, and it was in regards to the Fusion Firearms Freedom series of 1911s, more specifically the reaction model. I've been wanting to get my hands on a 1911 for some time and spend a lot of time shooting the gun, getting to know the platform, because that's not something that I've done previously. Full disclosure, I'm a complete 1911 novice, and I'm hoping to learn more as I do this. But I found myself in this interesting sort of situation where I don't want to spend well over $1,000 on what most would consider to be a high-quality 1911. After all, I've never owned one. But at the same time, I don't want to spend $500 on it and end up with something that I really don't like shooting, that I immediately want to sell, or worst case scenario, something that just completely falls apart in my hands and won't perform. So considering these two extremes, the Freedom series by Fusion is a pretty attractive option. I mean, if this thing performs half as good as it looks, it should be an excellent buy, right? We'll see, and we'll come back to that. Now, I didn't want to buy this gun blind, and by buying it blind, I mean that I need to be convinced first when I'm going to buy something. I want everyone on the internet to tell me how incredible their experience has been so that I can feel good about making a purchase. So I did what any educated person in the 21st century would do, and I Googled it. I looked it up on YouTube, and I was really surprised by what I found, or didn't find, rather. I think there were a handful of forum reviews out there on it. Some people had outstanding things to say about it. One guy had some horrific experience where nothing about it would work and ended up having to send it back permanently. Beyond that, I think there's one other YouTube video outside of what Fusion themselves has put out there. And let's be honest, we can't really take content from the manufacturer themselves too seriously because they're trying to sell you the gun, right? And regardless, we're still talking about 2, 3, maybe 4 guns. This isn't a large sample size, at least it's not big enough for me. But those were my options. 1, buy the gun and potentially end up with the crown jewel of affordable 1911s. The option 2 is I buy it and it could turn out to be a complete and utter disaster, in which case we will document that too. But I did buy it. And what I want to do is just a brief overview of the gun, talk about the shooting experience thus far, the plans that we've got coming for this thing, and a potentially looming issue that I have uncovered since I got back from the range. Which really puts a damper on this video, but we're going to talk about that too, coming up. So let's take a look at the gun itself. This is the Fusion Firearms Freedom Series reaction model. You can see it says reaction right there on the frame. I can appreciate the fact that they don't brand it across the length of the slide, which leaves the gun looking very sleek and minimalist in some ways. But in others, it has some high-end features, or features that you would more commonly see on high-end guns, which I can also appreciate. If you're hearing clanking or crunching in the background, that is my dog. I do apologize, but I'm not going to make her stop just for this video. In terms of the finish, it's a black oxide finish is what they call it, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding of black oxide is that it's some sort of bluing process, but as you can see here, it's much more of a matte finish rather than like a shiny traditional bluing. But in my opinion, it looks very nice, and it's better than a Parkerization, I would say, for sure. Now, how it holds up, we'll have to see. I've only put 200 rounds through the gun at this point. It is a steel slide and frame, and they are hand fit according to Fusion. Take that for what it's worth. It has an HD chrome barrel, is what they call it, and it does have a target crown on the barrel. It's very tight. I mean, the guy that transferred this in for me, he was like, I've never heard of this gun. And I said, me neither. And the first thing he commented on was the fit was really good. So that's awesome. It has a lot of your standard features that you would see on a typical 70 series, typical mag release. It does have front strap checkering here, which is not something that you would see on a 1911 in this price range typically. Now, it's not necessarily as finely done as some high-end manufacturers or 1911 makers, but at the same time, it is pretty aggressive and it's super grippy, and you can tell a huge difference when you sink your hand into that front strap checkering versus like a smooth steel front there. It also has some rear striations here, which the combination of the two make for a really easy handling gun. Not to mention it's 9mm on a huge steel frame, so you're not going to feel the recoil all that much anyway. It does have rear and front slide serrations, so you can press check if you would like to, if that's your thing. It has a milky white sort of fiber optic front sight. I think that's just a placeholder, and I will definitely be replacing it with like a red or a green fiber optic. And then it has a blacked out rear there, which it's fine. It works. I'm okay with it. I'm not going to be in a rush to replace any of those things except for that white rod. Now, the grips themselves are a red Cocobolo wood, and they're really nice. And they don't just look nice, they're actually pretty darn functional. It has this checkering on here that, well, let's just say it works. It works, okay? Your hand is not going anywhere, particularly with a 9mm, excuse me. Now, I may put some alternative grips on here in the future, but I do like the color and I think it looks really good overall. You've got your standard grip safety and then your safety, which is very functional. However, one of my only gripes as far as the shooting experience so far, and like I said, I haven't shot a lot of 1911, so this may just be a common thing. This grip safety to me has a very sharp edge. So if you're really riding this grip safety to bear down on the gun, I mean, it leaves, I don't know if you can see that, it leaves a red line straight up the middle of my thumb, and it can get a little bit wearisome, but at the same time, you know, it works really well too, so I'm not too upset about it. Beyond that, the trigger. Now, I'm gonna pull the trigger here in just a second, but it is a pretty standard, just aluminum trigger. It looks like it is serrated on the front, and it does have a place for adjustability, so you can go in there with like an Allen key and adjust that length of pull if you need to. So has a little bit of take up there. Let's see if I can get this on the camera good. A little bit of take up, wall, break, and reset is here, break. They advertise it at 3.5 pounds, I believe, or maybe 4 pounds, something like that. I can't speak to whether or not that's accurate. If I had to guess, I would say it's 4 or a little bit below. But at the same time, like I said, I haven't spent a lot of time on 1911 triggers, and I don't want to say something that's not true. I do want to get a trigger gauge in here at some point and actually do a pull test on it, at which point I'll probably be very embarrassed when it's like a 6-pound pull. No, I'm just kidding. It's definitely not, but I can't speak to exactly what the weight is on it. But this is it, and it's been really nice. It shoots really well, as you can imagine, being a full-size steel frame 9mm 1911. I was using primarily aftermarket Brownells mags for all of those first 200 rounds, and they did really well. The only issue I had was the 10th round's a little bit hard to get in there, and I didn't seat the final round in there properly, so that when I inserted the mag and it tried to ride the slide home, it was nose diving that round, even though it has like a quote unquote anti-tilt follower. And I may do a video just on those magazines too, since they're really a good buy from what I can tell so far. More to come on that. But it shoots really well. Now you're probably wondering at this point, given that I really only have good things to say about it, what's the downside? Only one thing that I can tell so far. So when I got back from the range, I pulled this out of the bag and locked the slide to the rear and dry fired it once, and the firing pin was stuck in the forward position. And when I say stuck in the forward position, I mean like protruding maybe 1/3 of an inch. And not only that, it was so far forward that this rear plate here that your hammer makes contact with was no longer retaining the pin, and it was falling out. It was no longer retained by the pin, and it was actually slipping out the back when it was out of battery like this. The plate would actually come off. So I remedied that by just allowing the slide to run home pretty forcefully, and it ran home and the firing pin would go back into place, probably purely due to inertia, but it still is a concern. And I started frantically Googling on my phone to see what the issue might be if somebody's seen that previously. There was a lot of talk about the firing pin spring being worn out or being too short or not being put in there correctly. I really don't think that's the issue. I also saw someone else say that at times you can, if there are like rough spots on the firing pin or if there was a lot of gunk, it could potentially get stuck forward. So that to me seems more likely, and I'm wondering if some oil got on the firing pin and then a lot of carbon from the first 200 rounds, and when I dry fired it, it just stayed there, right? So it's concerning. I'm gonna reach out to Fusion about it and see what they have to say, see if that's a common issue. I don't know, maybe you're not supposed to dry fire this gun, but to me that seems pretty odd considering the fact that most centerfire guns you should be able to dry fire. But who knows, maybe that's the case. But just the trigger one more time for you. Take up, break, reset, there, and break. So overall, I'm really liking it. My plan originally was to do 200 rounds, which I've done, and then do a 500 round check-in and ultimately put 800 to 1,000 rounds through this gun. And I would still like to do that. And in fact, I would like to compare this to some other 1911s in a similar price range and see how they hold up in comparison with one another. You know, there's a lot out there right now. There's Rock Islands, there's Metro Arms, and to me, this seems to be a step above those, but at the same time, that's still, I haven't seen any information on this, which is the primary reason for making the video, because I couldn't find any good information and I wanted for anyone else to be able to reference this in the future. So, do I recommend it? I don't know. Jury's still out. The firing pin thing freaked me out, to say the least, but I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt and continue shooting this thing. And I'm not gonna baby it either. I'm not gonna clean it up. It's very dirty right now from the first 200. I'm not gonna clean it a lot though. I may oil it if it really starts to have issues, but if I'm having any issues, I will certainly document every single one of those. On this first range outing, I put 200 rounds through it, primarily Blazer brass and Remington UMC, and then like a little bit, my friend had some Midwest, I don't know, but overall it was just ball ammo. I mean, Blazer brass has always been good for me, but the rest of it's just kind of junk stuff. So it ate everything up, and we'll see how it continues to do. It does come with one 7-round Metgar mag and this case as well. So let me see. Yeah, it comes with 8-round Metgar mag, which is fine. It works. But like I said, I did the majority of the shooting with the aftermarket Brownells mags. I bought these in a 3-pack on sale for like $60, and they did well. So it sticks out a little bit, but overall, good shooting experience with them so far. Something I haven't talked about to this point in this video is price. How much does it cost? Well, this gun MSRP's in July of 2019, which is right now for $800, I believe. I paid about $680, so whatever that pans out to be, $120 less than MSRP, which for the feature set, in my opinion, is a very fair price. Granted, that is contingent on it being reliable long term, which remains to be seen. But like I said, I'm going to be providing updates. I'm going to be putting a lot of rounds through this thing and not babying it in the process. And if you have had any experiences regarding a 1911 firing pin that sound at all similar to what I described in the video, please let me know. I'm super curious to learn more about that and to become more well-informed. Anyway, I hope this video is a good source of information regarding Fusion Firearms and the Freedom series of pistols moving forward, and I hope that you will tune in for future updates. But regardless, thank you for watching.